Well, good morning. Welcome to another Sunday morning coffee with Dr. Childress here. So today I've finished off the California Board of Psychology thing, and it's now just awaiting a decision. Uh, During that, there were some observers, and one of them, Elizabeth Dreicer, uh, submitted an amicus brief relative to the situation. Now, I didn't necessarily know about it. This is something she did independently. I think she did an excellent job of doing that. She asked for the permission of the administrative law judge, and she submitted it, and now the state has objected to its admission, and now the administrative law judge gets to decide what to do about that, whether to admit it or not. But I wanted to spend some time just talking about it today because it's an example of something important. And so it's up on my consulting website. So you can go to my consulting website and you just go, parents and California Board of Psychology documents, and it'll be down towards the bottom there. I have all the exhibits up top, and then down at the bottom I have her Amicus Curiae brief and the state's opposition to it. All of this is documentation, by the way. So that's what that's the stage we're in right now. And we'll talk about that in a second. For you parents out there, you kind of move through in a series. So you enter your middle phase and your late phase, and then you leave. And so the parents I was with in 2015 are not you. They've now left, and they've left you with the mess, and you're going to leave the next families with the mess, and it just keeps going. I told you about 15 years ago, I said, if you wait for me to do all of this, it's going to be about 15 years before we get a solution. And they waited for me to do it all. And so now we're at the end phase. So hopefully the generation after you will not face this, but you will still be captured and your lives will still be destroyed, unfortunately. And so just on her Curiae, she says, she's a parent. That's the first paragraph up there. And that's her interest in things. And then she gives an opening narrative about what happened, destruction in her life from the family court situation. But then the rest of it is not about her personal story. It's about advocacy and, the ability to speak and criticize other professionals when there's significant problems. And again, I think she did a really good job with it. So you can read that. The important thing I want to point out about it, though, is that it's individual action. And that's what's missing from parents out there. The parents' mindset, and it's not just you, it's been 15 years of you, the parents, because this is your children and it's traumatic and you're fighting for your children and stuff. There's a mindset, what about me? So you take all the information I give you and then you say, well, yeah, but how do I apply it to me? What about me and my situation? And if you are fortunate enough to solve your situation after 4 or 5 years of fighting and stuff, then you leave the situation and go on with your life, leaving all the other parents involved here. And so you don't really fight for each other. You go on your support groups and you complain about stuff, but you don't really stay and fight for each other. Where you need to fight is right now on a class action or legislative oversight. And where that's documented into the record, that's what I'm doing. So the reaction of parents is you could have observed the California board complaint, and we have maybe 10 to 20 observers on that. Imagine if the California Board of Psychology gotten 1,000 observers. Wow! But you couldn't make the effort to do that. So you're not working in support of anything. There's no unity. Imagine if there was media there. Wow. Imagine if state legislators were there from any state. Wow, or their aides. But nothing happened. Okay, so you're letting me carry the load of solving everything. And so your situation is going to be done. I mean, it's the next family, basically, next set that comes in over the next few years, who we will hopefully be able to solve. Right now, I've got about 3 custody evaluations coming in. And so I'm going to read them. I'm going to do my stuff, and there'll be maybe board complaints and stuff on them. But this destruction remains the same for these families that are coming in because the process remains the same. You guys are kind of stuck. So in terms of what's going on, it's institutional betrayal. And there's a primary article on this. It's from the American Psychologist. That's the flagship journal of the American Psychological Association. 2014, Smith and Freud. Freud is the primary developer of institutional betrayal trauma. And it's titled Institutional Betrayal. And the definition is that institutional betrayal occurs when an institution fails to protect those who depend on it, responds inadequately to reports of harm, or actively enables or perpetuates the harm. And that's the situation you're in. It's institutional capture. The forensic custody evaluators are conducting an experiment on you. It's an absolute failure. It's a very bad thing. It needs to stop. But as long as it's going on, as long as this experiment on you in the family courts is going on, your lives and the lives of your children are going to be destroyed. That's just a fact. So there's also another article I'd call your attention to on Gomez et al. From 2016 about the APA, the American Psychological Association, and institutional betrayal, called Collusion, Torture, and Inequality, Understanding the Actions of the American Psychological Association is Institutional Betrayal. And you can get both of these articles up on the web. They're available up there through ResearchGate. Now, this is not something new, okay? Institutional betrayal trauma. And the APA, it's not new to the APA either. What I suspect happened here is I've noticed the APA Ethics Code has this new ethics or a separate ethics piece about we're not allowed to participate in torture or enhanced interrogation techniques of the government. That's what they're talking about here. But boy, oh boy, once we get this one exposed, this is going to be like, the AI estimates since the 1980s, 2 million abused children undiagnosed in the family courts since 1980s, and another million targeted parents. Wow, that's just substantial betrayal when you have that many. And that's where we need to go back in and do the treatment for the now adult children and their parents who I watched for 15 years and who've been here for 40. We can't forget about them. We got to get to them, which is why institutional courage is what it's called. So that's the path I'm headed. And I know that's not the path you're headed on because you're asking, what about me and my situation? But you can't escape your situation. You're stuck in this institutional capture, and you're learning about it gradually. And so just on terms of individual action, back in 2018, I hand delivered a petition to the APA signed by 19,000 parents to the corporate offices of the APA with 2 parent advocates and other people, kind of came to Washington, D.C. as we did that. Then immediately after I did that, I put up this website, the APA Ethical Violations and Complicity with Child Abuse. Okay, I'm not mincing words here. The APA is complicit in child abuse. And the quote there from Einstein is, if I remain silent, I would be complicit. And yeah, if you're silent, you're complicit. And so I put up a counter on the website. It's been 2,776 days with zero response from the APA. So that's Exhibit 15. Okay, so it's documented into the record. So there's your institutional betrayal. 19,000 parents, tell them what the ethical violations are. No response from the APA for years. Okay, there's your institutional betrayal right there. I'm documenting it in. And I knew at the time that they weren't going to do anything because I know what's going on. I know it's been regulatory capture, institutional betrayal, and so there. I know where it went. I know whose hands they put it in and why there was no response. But I did it because not for 2018. I did it for 2026. That's your documentation of the institutional betrayal and regulatory capture that I was putting into place. And you can see I did it with the AFCC, I did it with the APA. Now I'm up into 2025 where I'm starting to submit board complaints pursuant to 1.05. I'm just walking it through step by step. And that's what I said. Parents back then, if you let me carry it, we're going to be another 10, 15 years on this. If you step up and join together and work together, and I've got blogs on this, then we can chop it down to a year or two, maybe even get it sooner. But they waited for me, and you're waiting for me to do it all. So your families are going to be destroyed, and there's very little you can do about it. You're going to go through the phases of the destruction. And you're going to leave the same incompetent people in the same structure for the next families, just as it was left for you from all the families from 15 years. They all left it for the next generation of families, the same inverted structure, the same destruction. They left it. And so now you're going to go into it because they didn't stop it back then. And you're not going to stop it this time. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm doing to stop it. So myself and Elizabeth and a few other people, there's a few people who are active, but on the proper paths, but most everybody is just focused on your own family. So there's an experiment being conducted on you in the family courts, and that's a very, very bad thing to do. And so there's an experiment on human subjects, the children and parents in the family courts, that is without IRB review, institutional review board. Oh my goodness, that's such a bad thing. Without a risk-benefit analysis and without protections for a vulnerable population, and in violation of all three principles of the Belmont Report. Now, you may not understand what this is about, but it is seriously bad to experiment on people. They're giving you only a forensic custody evaluation, their experimental approach. They are withholding clinical diagnostic assessments. We have a parent with a major psychiatric disorder. They're not not diagnosing it. Those are the custody evaluations that are coming in. I'm going to look at them and say, it's a delusional disorder, Walters and Friedman and Friedlander, and you're not diagnosing it. And so the destruction happens. You let it go. And in the one I've just reviewed, the custody evaluation I just reviewed, they believe the persecutory delusion. They believe the child is being malevolently treated in some way. If you believe the delusion, you become part of the delusion. You become part of the child abuse. And so that forensic custody evaluator is part of the child abuse because they believe the delusion because they are incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. Violation of 2.04, 2.01, and 2.04. So here's the New York Blue Ribbon Commission. I keep pounding on this one. In their analysis, evaluators may rely on principles of dubious validity in some custody cases because of a lack of evidence or the inability of parties to pay for expensive challenges of an evaluation. That's me. I'm the challenge of the evaluation. Defective reports, that's what's coming into me, can thus escape meaningful scrutiny and are often accepted by the court with potentially disastrous consequences for parents and children. We know this. We know this. We need to stop this. Please stop this and go back to actual diagnosis and treatment. But they just keep doing it because they're making so much money. By an 11-9 margin, a majority of commission members favor elimination of forensic custody evaluations entirely, arguing that these reports are biased, harmful to children, lack scientific and legal value. At worst, evaluations can be dangerous, particularly in situations of domestic violence and child abuse, and yet they continue, and that's what you're going to get. I've been advocating maybe you can get a dialectic behavior therapist and recruit them back into the courts, or a spousal abuse therapist. No, they're not coming. I hear reports from parents and they say, no, I don't work in the family court. So basically you're left with this. This is your route. This is what's going to happen to you, destruction through the forensic. And if you ask for a diagnosis, they're going to say no. They don't do diagnosis and they don't know how. And you look at their vita and they don't know about attachment. They don't know about delusions. So they're unethical and practicing beyond the boundaries of competence. And so now you can you're going to get their report, $20,000 to $40,000, and you're going to bring it to me because it's going to be awful. And I'm going to maybe do some correction on it. But then you're still not going to find anybody who can do the treatment because they're all incompetent and nobody's doing this, and you're in a captured system. So that's the kind of the situation. What about me? You ask, what about me? The kind of mindset. You're headed for destruction, and there's very little you can do about it. Now I'm available to consult with anybody. If you put me in touch with your mental health people, I can tell them what to do. I can tell them how to diagnose it. I can tell them how to treat it. I've got the diagnoses up on my YouTube channel and the Diagnostic series. So you can go over to my consulting website, go to YouTube, and you'll see the whole Diagnostic series over there. So, I'm doing everything I can, but there's no motivation, because the moment we stop doing custody evaluations, then a whole group of psychologists lose their career, and you don't have anybody else in the family courts. And so it's going to be a nightmare. There's a scandal coming. Oh my goodness, the size of which millions of children undiagnosed from child abuse. This is going to be seriously bad. So forensic custody evaluations need to end. We need to get diagnosis. The allied parent has a major psychiatric disorder called an encapsulated persecutory delusion. There is your DSM code for it, 297.1, delusional disorder persecutory type. And it is also V995.51, child psychological abuse. So let me be clear, it's in the DSM. Your ex has a major psychiatric disorder, a delusional disorder, not schizophrenia type. They have it from trauma. It's unresolved trauma that's distorting how they perceive the world, their thinking and perception. They see dangers where none exist. They see that you're somehow malevolently treating the child in some way. They have a persecutory delusion. It's encapsulated, meaning it's small in scope. It's just around you and your child and family. An encapsulated persecutory delusion. If you use the brief psychiatric rating scale, it's going to come out rating about a 5, moderately severe persecutory delusion. I've got a video up on the Diagnostic series about the BPRS and rating it. So that's what's there. Are they diagnosing it? No. And so they're letting it go on to your destruction, and over 20 years, 40 years. So the scope of the problem, you can estimate this with your AI. Just go into your AI and estimate the number of new divorces every year, estimate the number with children, two children per family, and the estimated rate of high conflict divorce. Those are the ones, the custody evaluations we're talking about, is about 10% of those. So what does that turn out to be? About 25,000 new high conflict custody cases each year in the United States, and a comparable number internationally, another 25,000 in the world. And with children per family, that's 50,000 psychologically abused children entering into the family courts each year. And they stay between 5 to 7 years before the children age out. So you have anywhere between maybe, 100,000, 200,000 children in the family courts, or more. My math is bad. Ask your AI how many are in the family courts, but how many are entering every year is about 25,000 families, 50,000 children who are being psychologically abused and having their lives destroyed. Now, I've worked child abuse. Okay, I know child abuse. My four worst top worst parents are sexual abuse, incest. That's off the chart. And then the second worst is a narcissistic borderline parent. The third is the physically abusive, the violent parent. Fourth is the substance abusing, depressed, neglectful parent. And fifth is the unmedicated bipolar or unmedicated schizophrenic. So if we take that incest, the sexually abusing parent off the table and just say they're really, really bad, then the top parent is what we're talking about, narcissistic borderline parent. And why do I put them so high over the physically and neglectfully abusive parent? Because each type of child abuse, physical, sexual, neglect, psychological, is immensely destructive to the child. All of them are destructive to the child. They differ only in the type of destruction. And a psychological child abuse from the narcissistic borderline parent is devastating because it destroys the child from the inside out. Okay, all the others coming in from the outside in, this one gets in the child and destroys her self-structure, destroys her insides, and that makes it extremely hard to treat, impossible once they hit adulthood because they don't have the self-structure that they lost during childhood. And so this is really, 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 really bad. But nobody cares. None of my doctor people, none of the psychologists really care how bad it is. They don't care enough to learn what's going on, the attachment system, delusional thought disorders and stuff. They're just over here making stuff up and exploiting families. So it's going to be really bad coming forward. So documentation, these are the relevant documentation for today's talk would be institutional capture and betrayal. That's Exhibit 10. These are all up on my website. You can also go to Case Lines and log in, and they're all in the documented evidence regarding this particular case. We have the Claude class action and institutional betrayal trauma. I recommend you read that one because that's talking about the future, what we got to do about this. Then we have the New York Blue Ribbon Commission quotes and quotes from Simon and Stahl about that. Is documentation about how the forensic custody evaluations are so bad. It's an experiment. It needs to stop. No IRB review. Oh my goodness, it's so bad. The petition to the APA, there's your documentation that they are captured institution, regulatory failure, regulatory capture, and then the differential diagnostic questions. Now, those differential diagnostic questions are what needs to be answered. Okay, there's a path A, path B analysis. When a child is rejecting a parent, there's only one of two possible causes. And that's because of the attachment system. Go to my diagnostic series and listen to diagnosing attachment pathology. The attachment system is a motivational system. Other systems are regulatory. They go up and down around a set point. That's a regulatory system. Attachment system is a motivational system. It always has directions: eating, pain, pleasure, sex, attachment. All the motivational systems have a direction. And the direction of the attachment system is always to bond to the parent, because the other motivational direction is death by starvation and predation. And so that's the origins of an attachment system, because that direction is death. And those genes are removed from the gene pool, so we get a very strong motivational system for children to bond to parents. Now, when we have a symptom of a children seeking to flee from a parent, a child rejecting a parent, there's only two things that can cause that, or actually one thing: child abuse. Okay, that's a disorganized attachment. It's caused by either psychotic or abusive range parenting, and it's either authentic child abuse by the targeted parent. That's path A. The targeted parent is doing something to abuse the child and getting the child to want to flee them. Or if it's a false, if that's a normal range parent, then it's a false or factitious attachment pathology imposed on the child. That's your persecutory delusion. That's your path B. That's your allied parent has a persecutory delusion and is creating a false or factitious attachment pathology in the child for secondary gain to that parent. So it's going to be child abuse one way or the other, path A or path B. We just don't know which parent. So we need to do a diagnostic assessment for that. Is the targeted parent abusive, or is the allied parent inducing a persecutory delusion in the child, a persecutory thought disorder about them being malevolently treated by the normal range parent, and they're destroying the child's attachment system, a factitious attachment pathology imposed on the child. Now, and so that's going to be exhibit 24, differential diagnostic questions. Now you can take that 24 and you can just give it to all your mental health people and say, I would like these questions answered. It's a yes, no checkbox. They'll say no. They'll say, no, I'm not going to answer your diagnostic questions. It's just insane for the last however long, since 2018, 2015 is when I started to get this out, saying, ask your mental health people to simple checklists. And they just go, no, I'm not completing a checklist. It's so bad what you're enduring and what you have to work with. So this is your situation. Everyone else in psychology, ADHD, autism, eating disorders, just everything else, depression, anxiety, gets diagnosis and treatment using the DSM-5, and we diagnose the depression, we diagnose the ADHD, we diagnose the autism, the eating disorder, substance abuse. We diagnose it and we treat it. You get something different. You get a forensic custody evaluation that we talked about, that are dangerous, harmful to children, produce defective reports, and that are recommended be eliminated from the family courts. That's what you get. You're separated off as a special class of people who get special psychologists who do not diagnose, do not treat, are unethical, and entirely incompetent. And it's just a matter of financial exploitation, pure and simple. All the parents over here are being financially exploited by everyone, by the forensic psychologists who make $20,000 to $40,000, have solved nothing for 40 years. By the reunification therapists, same thing, no diagnosis, their treatment is a complete failure, and they solve nothing, but they're taking your money. From the attorneys who get lots of money from conflict, they don't get money from solving things. And one parent, the pathological parent, doesn't want to solve anything, doesn't want this diagnosed, and so they get a shark for an attorney, a zealous advocate, drives up the costs of the other, the targeted parent's attorney, and so the attorneys are making money just fine off of conflict. The custody evaluators are making money just fine off of conflict. The therapists, everybody's making money off of continuing the conflict. And if they actually solve it, then they all go out of business. And we can solve it. My treatment plan for this pathology would be 3 to 6 months, and it's all solved. So 12 weeks, 12 to 24 weeks, and we get a complete solution on this. With a diagnosis guides treatment. It's child abuse. It's a delusional disorder. We treat that, and we can fix it, relatively easily, once we get the proper diagnosis. And we have testimony from Dorsey at the hearing that her workshop solves it in a matter of 4 days. So we can solve this really easily in a matter of days. We can restore it. But nobody cares because everybody's getting money from no diagnosis, no solution, and from destroyed lives. And so it's going to be a scandal. You have no idea. So here's your situation that you're in. These are the phases of abuse and destruction. So there's the new entry parents who come in and they're disoriented. They're disoriented by the nature of the pathology because it's a delusional disorder. It's not real. And it's a factitious disorder, and the child's rejecting them, and it's not true. So, wow, they're really disoriented by the pathology. They expected a divorce, and then all of a sudden their family goes all haywire, and their children start acting all um, hostile or afraid or those sorts of things. Plus, they're disoriented by the legal system. So now they have to navigate the legal system and get an attorney and all those sorts of things. And so they come in very disoriented. And what that makes them vulnerable prey then to the self-selected parental alienation experts who descend on them and give them this label. Oh, it's parental alienation. No, it's not. It's a delusional disorder. We need to get a DSM-5 diagnosis on it. There's no such thing as parental alienation, but then they get you to promote parental alienation and try to prove parental alienation to a judge rather than advocating for competent mental health services. So they get to be promoted as experts now in parental alienation and get to testify and stuff because you're promoting them and you're promoting this fabricated, made up pathology label. So it's just exploitation across the board. But then you have the disoriented families. And that's when you disoriented families, you get into custody conflict. It'll be about 18 months to 2 years, at which point you'll get a custody evaluation. Now you don't have a choice of getting a clinical diagnostic assessment. Their custody evaluators don't say you can get a custody evaluation for 6 to 9 months for $20,000 to $40,000, and we will advise the court on what the custody schedule should be, or you can get a clinical diagnostic assessment in 6 to 8 weeks for around $2,500, and we'll diagnose a persecutory delusion. Which one do you want? You're not given that choice. They're withholding the clinical diagnostic assessment and only giving you their 6 to 9 month forensic custody evaluation. That is so bad, so bad. I mean, this is going to be a scandal, off the chart scandal, but that's what you're going to have. And so I've tried to, over the last couple of years, saying maybe we can get a DBT therapist in, maybe we can get an IPV, intimate partner violence therapist, back into the courts to make the diagnosis. They won't come. So parents, I'm getting reports that you can't locate them. And so basically you only have one choice. You're going to go down the custody evaluation road. Then that's going to give you the New York Blue Ribbon Commission, the defective report. You're going to need meaningful scrutiny. So then you get a hold of Dr. Childress and whatnot. I'm using AI, and I'm still going to review this most recent one coming in. I'm going to do a catalog of concerns on it because it's so bad. So I'm just going through it line by line. I'm going to have an AI and Dr. Childress, and we're going to get a standard 1.04 letter out to the forensic custody evaluator, and with no response, I'll kick it up to 1.05. I'm going to file board complaint, and that's move that one off. The parents' lives are still destroyed. They still can't get therapy. They still can't get a diagnosis. They're still going into the courts with competing experts, and so I'm not sure it's going to actually solve their problem. But without the second opinion review, it's definitely headed towards destruction based on the custody evaluation. So it's just so bad. So then when you get the custody evaluation, what they'll say typically is that keep everything the same, which means the child remains with the allied pathological parent. The targeted parent is still being rejected, but we'll get reunification therapy with the child and the parent. And so now you go through about a year, 18 months, typically, maybe 2 years of reunification therapy. The child refuses to go, they do stuff, and then it gets haphazard, and so there'll be breaks in it. You get a new reunification therapist, but that doesn't happen. And the child's symptoms continue to get worse and worse and worse because they're with the pathological allied parent who's producing this. And the pathological allied parent has demonstrated to the child that they're the powerful ones and you are completely disempowered. So the child has to collapse into them. And so they've got the child. And so that's your middle phase right in there. So it'll be about another 2 years of destruction as you try this reunification therapy that doesn't work. Then sometimes it goes 2-3 years like that. They ask for a second custody evaluation from the same custody evaluator that messed up the first time because they don't know what to do. What do we do? The courts are trying to get information about what to do, but they got custody evaluators rather than clinical diagnostic assessments. If you get a clinical diagnostic assessment, you say it's a delusional disorder in the allied parent, separate the child, recover the child with the targeted parent, then restore the child's relationship with the pathological parent. Boom, 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 easy peasy. Okay, we can do that within 3 to 6 months. But we don't have that option because the forensic custody evaluators have captured the field. That's your institutional capture. It's been captured by the forensic custody evaluators. And so then you go into your final phase, which is your children begin to age out, all throughout this process. But eventually, all your children will age out, and you just go into your final destruction, where you go off to your traumatic grief, and the children go off to their destroyed young adulthoods because they've have half their attachment networks, more than half, is just massively damaged. So that's the path right there. That's what's going to happen. And so now a lot of parents who are listening to me are on the new entry, and you're disoriented. You're looking for information, saying, "What do I do? What do I do?" And there is no solution for you. That's just the way of things. What you need to do is what Elizabeth is doing. You need to become more active at a higher level than just what about me. You have to see this as you're solving this for all families everywhere, because until we solve it for all families everywhere, there is no solution for you. Okay, you're in a captured system, and so the what needs to occur here, where we are right now, is parents need to be contacting your state legislators. And the next phase is a class action lawsuit. Now, I'm a psychologist. My AI is AI. We're neither one of us is an attorney. But that seems to be the approach that needs to happen here because nobody's moving. The problem with the state legislators is going to be that, right now the Trump administration is sucking all the oxygen from the room, so nobody's paying attention to what's happening in the family courts. So ultimately, I think that's class action. Now, I will be starting on writing journal articles, and I'm going to be writing books. Look at me, old guy. I keep telling you, I've only got a couple more years here. So you have relied on me to solve everything. So it's taken me 15 years. I'm solving it. Next few years is going to be pretty brutal in professional psychology. They're coming after my license. I'm going after their license. It's going to be a mess. Once we pull the forensic custody evaluations, the entire family court system collapses. You will have zero mental health services in the family courts. Zero mental health service because it's going to be too dangerous to practice in the family courts. You don't have competence, and if they try to come in and not be competent, they're going to lose their license or get sanctioned, and so they won't come, and so it's just going to be a mess. That's why we need the class action. 50 state licensing boards, APA, AFCC, and the forensic custody evaluators, i.e. their malpractice insurance. The law firm settles that case. They make their money from the settlement. And then as part of the settlement, we get the states to fund intervention into the family courts, and you get the APA to step up and start doing recruitment and training for both the family courts active as well as the institutional betrayal trauma with the now adult children and with their parents. So that's the vector I'm headed for on a solution. So you can wait for me. You can help me along. You can get a hold of your legislators. You can start acting as individuals together. But as long as you're just looking at how do I get my child to stop and restore my family, you're in a captured system, and it's not possible. So let's go back. This is what you've got. Okay, this is where you are over. You are not part of actual psychology, and you're in the system of exploitation. Okay, that's exactly what you captured. And so you say, what can I do about my situation? How can I solve, get my child a diagnosis? And you can't. You cannot, because you're in the captured system. And so you need to break out of that captured system. Let me just share with you something here about abuse pathology. Again, I've worked child abuse up close and personal. And one of the features about child abuse, particularly sex abuse, which is what we have in the family courts, is the rippling of sex abuse trauma. But one of the things about abuse pathology is it isolates its victim from reporting and rescue. Classic feature. So if I see a kid that's isolated away, my radar goes up. I go, wait a minute. I want that child have access to reporting and rescue. And so they isolate. That's exactly what's happened to you. You've been given your own special psychologists who do not diagnose and treat, and they've been given quasi-judicial immunities, so the licensing boards don't review them, their reports, and so they're pretty much unethical, do whatever they want to you, and they are doing whatever they want to you. And there's no oversight, there's no protection, there's no standards of practice, there's no ethical guidelines. Everything is just lawless in the family courts. And as a result, the lives of children are being destroyed from undiagnosed and untreated child abuse, and their parents' lives from undiagnosed and untreated spousal abuse by the allied parent using the child as a weapon. So, until you break that isolation and until you can get back into the actual diagnosis and treatment like everybody else, as long as you're separated out like this, there's no solution for you. Now, you can struggle and try and come to me, and I'll give you an AI analysis. I'll tell you everything that's wrong. I'll tell you what all the symptoms look like. It looks like a persecutory delusion, and oh my goodness, it looks like child abuse. And I'm in Seattle, Washington, and you're in North Carolina or Ohio or Texas or Florida or somewhere. So you need somebody in your location to do the treatment. I can consult with them. Absolutely. Get a hold of me. I can do consultation. I've got videos up on YouTube, Diagnostic series, if they can watch those. I do these talks every Sunday. And so I'm giving all the information, but they don't want it. There's no motivation to solve anything from your psychologist. And so until you break that capture and get real psychologists in, but it's not going to help you in your case. It's going to help the next family and the next family and the next family and the next family. And that's not how you think. You don't think about solving this for all the families. You just are worried about your children because you're your children. You love them so much. You're disoriented. You're trying to figure out how to solve the situation. You can look back on my blogs. I've written blogs that there is no solution, and so like 2018 period. I wrote blogs that said there is no solution until we solve it for everyone. And so parents need to get that kind of mindset, and it will move faster. Or you can just wait for me, and then I'll die, and then it'll come after I'm dead, and people will start to change 5-10 years from now, which won't help you and your children at all in your situation. So that's the kind of the situation we're in the family courts. I've moved into a different phase. I put my license on the line. I've been able to document now directly into the licensing boards. Standard 1.05 says to notify National Committees on Professional Ethics, APA Ethics Committee. I did that in 2018 with petition to the APA, and in 2025 with the 6 instructors from the AFCC. So I've notified them twice. Notify appropriate institutional authorities. That's the AFCC. I told them directly in a national conference with a set of slides in 2017. Check. And then again in 2025 with the 6 instructors for their course. Twice now I've notified them. And with the licensing boards is the third one I'm required to notify. So that was done recently with the licensing board complaints on 6 top forensic psychologists. They're top people that are supposedly top people in forensic psychology. I filed board complaints against all 6 of them. You can learn about that from my website and elsewhere. And so I'm notifying the licensing boards about, because this is a course and their VITA is, so course is 2.04 violation, VITA is 2.01. Boundaries of competence, and those don't get quasi-judicial immunity, and there's no release features for that. So now the board is presented with ethical violations and no way to cover it. So that's one notice. Then this hearing. So that's what I did for the hearing. I documented everything into the record. So now I have discharged my duty to protect twice to the licensing boards, twice to the APA Ethics Code, twice to the AFCC, twice to the licensing boards. I'm done. Okay, now I can leave the family courts because I've discharged my duty to protect to the licensing boards. It's up to you now to get your licensing boards to enforce ethical standards to protect the citizens of the state rather than protect the unethical forensic custody evaluators. It's all reversed. So you need to get the state legislators on saying what's going on with the licensing boards that are protecting the unethical psychologists to the substantial harm of the citizens. Boom, everything cracks open. A parent, going back to Elizabeth, a parent in Pennsylvania got the legislator to hold committee hearings on that, and I was invited out to speak to the committee on that. And so you can do that. I'm willing to talk to any legislators, any legislative aides, any attorney, anybody. I'm talk to anybody, but it's not up to me to make that happen. Okay? I'm doing my role, and I've done my role. All the information is needed out there to solve everything. I'm going to be starting to do journal articles. I'm going to do book writing and make my money the last few years on books. I'm going to shift away from these Facebook and over to Substack. And so you can come follow me on Substack. I'll continue to do these Sunday coffees with Dr. Childress on Facebook, but I'm anticipating most of my activity will go over to Substack. Once the board complaints in California simmer down and we find out what happens with them, if I get to keep my licenses, then I'm going to put them all on inactive because I don't really use them. That'll allow me to consult with everybody everywhere out there all the time forever because I'm no longer a licensed psychologist, but I can still review all the custody reports, review everything. Old people consult, young people do. So I'm turning it over to the young people. I will review stuff. I will look at stuff. I will be the senior clinician in the family courts, but I'm leaving. I'm not arriving. Okay, so you're going to have to solve this more systemically over the future. So with that, I'm going to head off to my Sunday here and keep on working and getting back into things. Good luck. I know I've sat with you through your suffering for 15 years now. We have your families, or hopefully the final families who will go through this, but we'll see. You're basically just leaving it to me to solve it, so we'll see how fast I can solve it. It's taken me 15 years to get here, probably another 3 to 5 years for just me to get a handle on this, and that puts me in the death kind of range. So we're looking at a solution maybe after I'm gone from here, which will be unfortunate, but unfortunate for you because you won't have my input. But I don't care. Once I'm out of here, I'm out of here. So with that, Take care, everybody, and let's see. And we'll just touch base with you next week about some other aspect of the family courts here. Take care. Bye-bye.